In the late 1990s, a devastating crisis emerged in the automotive industry, a dangerous pattern of tire failures on Ford's best-selling SUVs and light trucks equipped with Firestone tires. The fallout from these failures led to hundreds of fatalities, thousands of injuries, and an outcry that ultimately forced both Ford and Firestone to confront some hard truths about their products and practices. This controversy, which included a massive recall, congressional inquiries, and new federal regulations, changed automotive safety standards and left a lasting impact on public trust in these two brands. The partnership between Ford and Firestone went back nearly a century, with Firestone supplying tires for many Ford models since the early days of automotive manufacturing. Ford's popular Ford Explorer, which hit the market in 1990, was outfitted with Firestone's ATX, ATX2, and Wilderness tires. As one of America's top-selling SUVs, the Explorer represented Ford's dominance in the family-oriented SUV market, a trend that surged in popularity throughout the 1990s. However, both companies would soon face questions about whether they had prioritized market demands over consumer safety. As early as 1996, concerning reports about Firestone tire failures started to trickle in. Firestone received information from state officials in Arizona that ATX tires on some vehicles, including the Ford Explorer, were separating at the treads under high temperatures. When Firestone engineers investigated, they determined that the tire separations could be attributed to extreme usage or heavy loads on dirt roads. The company initially replaced the problem tires with heavy-duty ones, but did not issue a public alert or recall. Meanwhile, an internal analysis by Firestone revealed a rise in injury claims related to the ATX, ATX2, and Wilderness tires. Despite these signs, Firestone continued to market the tires, even as safety researchers and legal teams began building a case for a pattern of defects. In 1998, Ford started replacing these tires in Venezuela after 46 deaths were linked to tire failures. This replacement effort, however, was limited to international markets, and the company did not extend the recall to U.S. customers, hoping to avoid broader panic. The situation escalated in 2000 when Samuel Boyden, a researcher at State Farm Insurance, began investigating tread separations in Firestone tires. By forwarding data to the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration, Boyden exposed a growing problem that had, until then, remained somewhat hidden from regulators. That same year, a Texas news station broadcasted a detailed story about tire-related fatalities involving Firestone-equipped Ford Explorers, prompting thousands of concerned calls to NHTSA and forcing the agency to open a formal inquiry. The subsequent investigation revealed that the tread separation on the Firestone tires at high speeds often led to catastrophic rollovers on the Ford Explorer, a vehicle already prone to instability due to its higher center of gravity. As NHTSA's inquiry deepened, it became clear that both Ford and Firestone had been aware of these problems for years, but had failed to take adequate action. The growing scrutiny led Ford and Firestone to publicly trade accusations. Firestone blamed Ford's recommendation for low tire pressure, 26 psi, for contributing to tire failure. The company argued that the low pressure caused the tires to overheat and weaken when under stress, making them prone to separation. Ford, in turn, argued that Firestone's tire design and manufacturing process were at fault. Ford pointed out that the Goodyear tires used on similar models did not exhibit the same failure rates, suggesting that Firestone's tires were inherently defective. An internal investigation would reveal that Firestone's Decatur, Illinois factory had higher failure rates than other plants producing the same tire models. Additionally, Firestone's factory employees testified that quality control problems, including hurried production schedules and cost-cutting measures, had potentially allowed defective tires to pass inspection. Ford also faced questions about the Explorer's design, which featured a top-heavy construction and narrow wheelbase, making it susceptible to rollovers. The public dispute between the two companies further tarnished their reputations and underscored the severity of the crisis. On August 9, 2000, Firestone issued a recall of 6.5 million ATX and Wilderness tires, marking one of the largest tire recalls in history. However, for many, this action came too late. In addition to the recall, Ford began replacing Firestone tires on millions of Explorers, even expanding the recall to include additional tires not initially covered by Firestone's recall. The recall marked a turning point for consumer confidence in both companies and led to a wave of lawsuits from families affected by these accidents. The scandal spurred Congress to pass the Transportation Recall Enhancement, Accountability, and Documentation (TREAD) Act, signed into law in October 2000. The TREAD Act required car manufacturers and suppliers to report any signs of defects or failures to NHTSA more transparently and swiftly. The new legislation aimed to ensure that potential safety issues would not be ignored as they were in the Ford-Firestone case. After months of investigation, NHTSA identified several factors contributing to the tire failures. Firstly, the manufacturing quality at Firestone's Decatur plant was subpar compared to its other plants, resulting in weaker adhesion between the rubber belts, which caused tread separations. Additionally, Firestone's tire design lacked the structural integrity needed to endure the high temperatures and heavy loads associated with SUVs like the Explorer. NHTSA also examined the role that Ford's tire pressure recommendations played in the incidents. The recommendation to inflate tires to 26 psi for a smoother ride came under scrutiny, as low pressure could lead to higher tire temperatures, making the tires more susceptible to wear and ultimately separation. In response, Ford raised the tire pressure on the Explorer to 30 psi and made further changes to the SUV's design, including widening its wheelbase and lowering its center of gravity to improve stability. The repercussions of the scandal were enormous for both companies. Firestone's parent company, Bridgestone, saw a significant drop in stock value, and Firestone had to restructure its operations. As consumer trust plummeted, Firestone's market share dwindled, forcing the company to close its Decatur plant in 2001. Ford also suffered financial losses, facing thousands of lawsuits from victims and their families and seeing a significant blow to the Explorer's reputation. The nearly century-long partnership between Ford and Firestone dissolved in 2001, with both companies accusing each other of compromising consumer safety. Firestone's CEO, Masatoshi Ono, and Ford's CEO, Jacques Nasser, both eventually stepped down as a result of the controversy. The Ford-Firestone controversy remains one of the most notorious examples of corporate oversight in the automotive industry. It exposed gaps in regulatory oversight and underscored the dangers of prioritizing cost over safety. In the years following the scandal, both companies shifted their focus towards rebuilding their reputations and implementing stricter safety standards. Today, the Firestone-Ford controversy serves as a stark reminder of the importance of transparency and accountability in the automotive industry. The changes brought about by the TREAD Act continue to influence safety standards, requiring that any potential safety risks be promptly addressed to prevent a recurrence of such tragedies. The legacy of this crisis remains a critical chapter in the history of automotive safety, underscoring the high stakes of protecting lives on the road.